Muy bien, muchas gracias Alejandro. Buenos días a todos y bienvenidos a nuestra mesa redonda sobre el mercado de España. Primero, agradeceros que estéis aquí porque estamos compitiendo amistosamente con otro interesantísimo panel de energía en la sala de seguridad.
We're competing amiably, competing with the energy panel in the parallel session. You know that everything will be then broadcast in our website, so you can listen to it if you want later. So we have Augusto Pérez, member of the board of IGRIA. As you know, he was recently appointed, a new president was recently appointed, Mr. San Millán, who's also here. To my right is Juan Carlos López Porcel, president of AGERS, and Martín Navaz is the president of ADECOSE, the Spanish Association of Insurance Brokers. Well, most of you know your associations already, but there are people coming from abroad, so I don't know if you can briefly present your associations, the associations you represent. Thank you, David. I want to congratulate Mapfre for the success of this meeting. It's already a reference in the industry, so it comes as no surprise. So anyway, thank you for inviting us, and thank you for inviting me to explain what IGRIA is. What is IGRIA? It is an initiative created in 2009, and the main features of this association is that we can accept just companies as members that work on risk managers. So we only accept companies. We don't accept physical individuals. We don't accept individuals. We, of course, want to defend the interests of those companies in the role of risk managers, and we want to guarantee the independence, the decisions, and the criticism that we make of the markets, because they are always respectful. Nowadays, IGRIA has consolidated its growth, and now we have around 45 partners. All of them are big companies, as I said. Most of them are very big companies. More than half of the companies that compose the IBEX 35 index are part of IGRIA. So we designed a meeting format specially devised for experience exchanges and knowledge exchanges between the partners. Of course, we can learn from other professionals, or for example brokers or insurance companies, but risk managers can also learn from each other in how we handle our programs, those who have captive in companies, how we have managed Solvency II, the compliance with Solvency II. And IGRIA also wants to be a stakeholder in the market, in the relations with the institutions and the regulators. We want to be the reference stakeholder, and that's why we have recently started to have an opinion and to issue an opinion on all topics that affect the risk managers, and we issue that opinion in the market, within the market, so that we can foster collaboration among all the stakeholders. Now, Juan Carlos. Good morning. I want to thank Mapfre for the invitation, and I want to congratulate you too for the organization of this conference. And I'm very happy to be here today with colleagues that I can learn from so much. We have prepared a video to introduce the company, and that will explain what we are better.
¿Qué es AGERS? AGERS, la Asociación Española de Gerencia de Riesgos y Seguros, defiende y lidera desde 1984 los intereses de los profesionales de la gestión de riesgos en España. AGERS es la única asociación en España que integra a todos los perfiles de los profesionales que se dedican a gestionar los riesgos. Empresas y administraciones representadas por sus directores de riesgos y sus equipos, aseguradoras, brokers, mediadores, peritos, abogados y consultores. ¿Qué es la gerencia de riesgos? La gerencia de riesgos es la actividad profesional directiva de carácter estratégico que tiene por objetivo identificar, evaluar y prevenir las situaciones de riesgo en una organización mediante una metodología científica y directiva. ¿Quién es el gerente de riesgos? En un mundo como el actual, con escenarios mucho más complejos, cambiantes y turbulentos, surgen nuevos riesgos globales como los cambios regulatorios, los movimientos geopolíticos, los ciberataques, el cambio climático, las amenazas medioambientales o las crisis económicas. Para hacerle frente a estas y otras amenazas, entra en escena el gestor de riesgos, quien trata de prever y evaluar con antelación las nuevas tendencias que pueden surgir en riesgos, protegiendo los activos de la sociedad que representa. ¿Qué ofrece AGERS? La asociación ofrece una amplia gama de beneficios para las empresas asociadas y les permite formar parte de las actividades de la misma a través de herramientas como la junta directiva, la asamblea, los grupos de trabajo o las comisiones científicas. AGERS trabaja sobre una serie de líneas estratégicas, a través de la investigación de vanguardia, generando un cuerpo de conocimiento para el estudio y la difusión del ecosistema del riesgo que discurre dentro de las grandes empresas, impulsando el networking entre los actores implicados en el colectivo, colaborando con universidades públicas y privadas, otras asociaciones profesionales y provinciales, así como las distintas administraciones españolas, participando en proyectos estatales, europeos e internacionales, formando y reciclando a los profesionales del riesgo y seguros con contenidos prácticos y teóricos a través de la experiencia de profesionales de prestigio del sector, editando publicaciones especializadas que permitan divulgar la metodología científica de la gerencia de riesgos. Misión. AGERS es una asociación solvente y cercana, comprometida con la evolución del sector de la gestión de riesgos, siempre a la vanguardia del colectivo, ya sea a través del establecimiento de pautas y códigos de conducta ética, dando valor a la disciplina de la gestión de riesgos por medio de la investigación, promoviendo el intercambio y la pluralidad entre los miembros de la asociación e interviniendo activamente en los órganos consultivos y de decisión de las instituciones, AGERS se convierte en un referente como lugar de encuentro y foro nacional, autonómico y local para los profesionales de la gestión de riesgos y seguros.
Muy bien, estupendo. Y por último vamos contigo, Martín. Vamos a ver si...
Well, very good. So now, David, no, Martin. Well, thank you, David, and thank you for inviting us today. It is a pleasure for us to be present in this type of workshop. And I want to congratulate you because as soon as we arrived in Salamanca, we went into a shop, and the shop attendant asked us what we were doing in Salamanca, and we said, well, we came for the MAFRE conference, and he started saying, oh, MAFRE is a great insurance company, and they are a big quality company. They also help us very well every time there's a loss, and they help in preventing the losses. So my congratulations to the Salamanca sales representative. Well, we are a professional association in Adecose. We've been working for 42 years, and we have over 100 associates. We are a classical lobby, and we want to be part in all the decisions that are taken, that are made, in this industry, both in Spain, in Europe, in Latin America. We are part of BIPARC, which is the European Federation of Insurance Mediation. The next president, who will be appointed in 2 weeks' time in Vienna, will be the treasurer of our association. So this is a big achievement. The current board decided to really get involved in everything that was going on in Europe. We are also part of the EIOPA body that represents mediation business. The EIOPA is the European body that represents European mediators, and we have an appointee, an advocacy appointee, and we are part of many other associations and organizations. We are part of the board, and we try to be there all the time, every time they speak about insurances, and we try to represent our interests with our limited resources. And we also want to improve the image of the insurance brokers, both in our country and other countries. In this kind of meetings, in this kind of conference, in today's conference, everybody knows what is a broker, what a broker is, but in other atmospheres, in other fields, people don't know what a broker is. In Spain, there are professional associations, UNESPA, and our associations, ADECOSE, representing the legal brokerage entities, not individual brokers. We have a reputation, we are well known, and we also publish what we call a barometer of the situation between the insurance companies and the brokers. We have digitization tools, standardization tools, and we're now working on digitization mainly. We want to help our associates be more digitized, because, well, we have big transnational companies and big companies as associates, but also medium-sized or other types of associates that maybe do not have those facilities. Well, now I'm going to pose you some questions. The first question will be the current state of affairs of the insurance market globally, but also individually in Spain. As you know, and as you see, we've been incurring losses for 2 years. In this 2 years' time, 200,000 million euros of losses is the amount that we're facing. So all the companies that take part in the corporate business, in the big risk business, have very high combined ratios, over 100%, not just in 2017, but also in 2018. So that leads to a change of cycle, that month after month we see that it gets harsher. So we see that that change of cycle is coming. On the other hand, in Spain, the concentration of the market makes a situation in which 5 big groups concentrate all the premium. So we have very few players. We concentrate most of the business in our hands. But that concentration of the insurance market within the financial sector, if compared with the rest of the financial sector, banks, is lower. After the recession in Spain, we have like 39 banks. We used to have 39 banks, sorry, now concentrated in just 9 banking groups, so the same concentration. With more players, but also a concentration, and 90,000 job positions have been lost. And the insurance companies, the insurance market, nevertheless has shown resistance and stamina and resilience. We've been able to survive. So I'd like to ask Augusto to act to be the psychic here and try to foresee what the future holds in store for us. Do you think the soft market is really over? Do you think the change of cycle will be sustainable on the medium and long term or just on the short term? The increases we're living are generalized or just in a couple of industries separate from the big international markets? Do you foresee a lack of capacity to cover some risks? Is there been a change of strategy by the main players in the market? Do you expect less dependence on some difficult markets such as the UK market? Well, I would say, with your first question, I have to say yes. We are living in harsher conditions. There's a hardening of the situation. We need to listening all the time to the warning signs, to the warnings that we need to adjust our premiums, our rates, our fees. So I think yes, the situation has been harder. Alfredo Aran said that everything will depend on the industry, the business line, the geographical situation. Alfredo last week made a summary that was fantastic, line after line, activity after activities, and I think Agers has put it on their website, and I recommend all of you to read it because that's a reference document that you have to look at. I don't want to be repetitive, so I'll leave it there, but we have to really abandon the traditional defensive position. We cannot say that the inefficiencies are due to the result of bad actions by the insurance company. I think we all have to be part of the solution. We all have to assume responsibilities. We have to assume that the market cycles are inherent to the big risk segments. The difficulty in evaluating the risks, the uncertainties inherent to them, the volatility of results cannot be compared with other segments, for example, the personal insurance, life insurance, or massive segments or massive risks. It is not just because we work on natural catastrophes, typhoons, earthquakes, alternating with years of good results. And also we have cyber risks. We have to look at the evolution of them. And for example, the GDPR, the evolution of regulations, or the case precedents. So let's face it, let's assume it, let's accept it. The cycles are there and we have to live with them. If we want the shareholders to keep giving us the capacity we need, and to keep trusting on the big risks departments, we need them to understand that there will be an adjustment every few years. So I prefer to focus on what we could do to weather the difficulties or to handle the difficulties. So the first thing I would say would be that you need to know the risks. You need to have an in-depth knowledge of the risks you handle, and you have to provide the insurers with information, with transparency, reliable information, quality information. That's not easy. We all know that the internal education task, so that all the information flows to all department, is paramount. We need them to understand that this information has to flow from us to the companies so that they can understand that we know the risks and that we handle them well. And of course, when there is a soft cycle going on, it is easy to provide scarce information. But when the hard cycle comes, those who haven't really done things well will be the ones to fall first. So we will find ourselves competing for capacity. So you were talking about the concentration of the market. I am not afraid of that, but of course when the hard cycle comes, there will be scarcity in terms of capacity for some of them. Another issue that is fundamental for me is optimization. Optimizing programs doesn't mean getting them cheaper or lowering the fees and lowering the fees and lowering the fees again. On the short term, that is okay, and we can get an award or congratulations on the part of our CFO. We might get discounts, 2-digit discounts every year, but when the harsh cycle comes, we will have a budget problem. So if we have a budget, we need to spend it, but by optimizing it and by using that information in order to optimize the coverage, to increase the limits, the sub-limits, to include accessory coverages in order to reduce the retention or to reduce the deductible. So when the hard cycle comes, it will be maybe relatively easier to weather the situation by renouncing to some of the improvements that we included when the cycle was soft. And also we have to work with long-term partners, partners who won't overreact. Of course, there will be need for adjustments in certain situations, but we don't like to partner with people who swing sideways or who overreact, who act very aggressively at some point in time and then 1 year later withdraw completely from that business line. We don't like that lack of reliability and trust. And we also want companies or partners who can foresee what will happen, who can warn their managers, their directors with enough time, and who will propose solutions and alternatives. So that's basically what we expect from our partners. And finally, we want our partners to really value the good risk management.
Juan Carlos, any reflection that you would like to share with us? Yes, I agree 100% to what my colleague Augusto said. But since we can ask for things at this forum, I would like to ask you for this. Obviously, the topic of this, or the thing that insurance companies do is clear, but when a tough cycle comes, then it's there. So from the part of the beneficiaries, we should not link this financial activity so much, because sometimes insurance companies are like banks. So when we're trying to recuperate these losses in time, sometimes our Director General asked us, well, is this an insurance company or a bank? Because I have to give back the money as if it was a loan. So maybe it would be interesting to see and to think about not being bankers, but insurance companies. Okay, take note. All right, so our second question. The Spanish market, Martín. and also the European market is heading towards more and more regulation. So we talk about solvency, sustainability, new technologies, everything is more present, and this derives into a higher vigilance of brokerage companies, insurance companies. So I would like you to share your point of view as part of this association of brokers. As you can see in my slide, we do not know whether this is a reality or a challenge. I would say maybe a reality. So we are among this financial sector. The aspiration was to be part of this financial sector, not to be considered a different sector. And during these past few years, this financial sector has known some known implications that have not been that popular. And that meant that our sector that was already regulated and had some regulations that need to be fulfilled, they have worsened because of the circumstances of the financial sectors. So at present, we have the regulations of the European Union. So that is why we want to be there and work on the topics on the field. This EU regulation is very complex because 27 countries need to agree. Imagine what it's like, because here in Spain we have 17 autonomous communities and we cannot agree on anything, so it's very complex. And the obsession is to protect the consumer and the client, which is something that is the umbrella of all EU directive or regulations for the past few years. And then we have an added thing, which is that of BFID. This MiFID directive wanted for all type of regulations to have that seal of approval. For instance, to have a good client experience, which is not something really directly linked to risks, but one of the biggest success stories in Europe for us was for this influence of this MiFID directive to only be constrained to these investment insurance products. Even more if the insurance responsibility falls on the beneficiary. So in these past few years in Europe, we've had two directives. The first one in 2006 that really revolutionized how mediation worked in Spain, especially everything that had to do with brokers and brokerage. And now we have the 2016 directive that has not already been fully implemented or translated into the Spanish regulation, but we have cooperated with the General Insurance Direction. And so what's going to change is the name, because now it's a distribution instead of mediation. So now the information will be shared differently towards the client, because we need to overprotect clients because of all of these legislation issues. So us as insurance brokers, we need to have a higher administrative burden. We need to document absolutely everything we do. And with regard to product governance, that has been object of a debate in Europe. It has not been properly solved, and now we're working on them to solve the issues. So now it is up to the broker to have this responsibility that usually belongs to the manufacturer. If we, as brokers, intervene in the drafting of the policy, which is something that we were not used to up until now. I do not want to get into detail, but I'd like to say that this distribution directive, which due to the Spanish situation has not been implemented fully, probably next year or as a general decree law, in July or September we will have fully implemented here in Spain. The sector has been awaiting it for years. We know what it looks like. We understand that we are all prepared to implement this directive. And since there has been a big delay here, we know what we need to do, so there is no time for adapting now. This regulation fulfillment, because if the big brokers have their own resources, but those smaller brokers, we belong to an association, and in our own organizations, we do not have all of the knowledge in order to fulfill this compliance. And so from the association, we're trying to support our partners on the most relevant topics, which are, as I've already mentioned, the information that needs to be given to the beneficiary or our clients. And this is a bit messy because the beneficiary needs to be protected and we need to inform them. We also have a document that in 1.5 pages needs to draft the whole policy. We need to summarize the whole information because we have a document that is probably about 42 pages long, the whole insurance, and we need to summarize and inform the client in just 1.5 pages. So the broker will probably have presented the alternatives to the client, and then the client needs to have both documents, the full document and the summarized one. So we believe that we need to work together with insurance companies, because otherwise it will be all very messy, because if we have that amount of information and we give that to the client, we'll end up confusing them and they won't understand what we're doing. With regard to data protection, that has been a big milestone for us, but there is an EU regulation that means that all client data, as long as clients agree, they need to be available for third parties. This is going to be a real revolution, as long as I said, as client wants it. We now talk a lot about big data. It's something very fashionable, although I'm not sure that this is very realistic if we talk about the short term. Data protection is something that we are working on as well. Money laundering is important because it affects the investment and the different insurance products. And this is something that could be talked about when discussing other type of insurance. Then we have consumer laws that affects insurance products in general, intellectual property, the electronic signature. Now, having you don't need to be a big company to be a broker, but you have a big challenge, which is compliance, and the organization I work for is one that really needs to help others. That is something that we need to do, and that entails cost, or at least an investment that is very relevant. I believe that compliance will be successful only if our regulating entity will be independent, which will allow for resources to be there. And that is something that is complicated so far. So this is the real challenge for the next government here in Spain, and we'll probably see this within the next few months or so, because we're the only European country that doesn't have it. Then there is another issue, the issue of the broker, and also let us discuss what is the current situation of brokers. We see that at present, that every year there are merging of big companies, or at least rumors of huge mergers or acquisitions. This is something that we see on our daily basis. So we see that 2/3 of the whole volume generated for world brokerage, they're in the hands of the 3 main brokers. So as we can see, it's a sector that is very much concentrated among these three brokers. So there is a lot of competition because players are becoming bigger and bigger. So this is the environment. So Martin, what is your personal vision? What is the added value that you give beneficiaries and companies? I agree with you. There has been a lot of conversation regarding this acquisition concentrations. In Spain, with Mark JLT, there is also Aon and Willis. These are the big brokers. And what they're really doing is widening the scope of their activities, and it's not just about the classical broker, or they're more towards consulting as well now. But the reality of the market is here. I would like to give you a couple of data regarding this. In 2013, we had 5,169 brokers. This is an information that is not precise because some autonomous communities in Spain, they do not release their data. This is something that is available for consumers. And in 2017, we were 5,488. We'll see the data in 2018 very soon, but it will be about 500. So it's a very minimal sector, really, despite the economic crisis, which has been very deep, despite the market that is such highly competitive, despite the fear of this bank sharing or online sales, we still have about a bit over 5,000 brokers in Spain. So I don't know what's going to happen in our sector for this to become a revolution, because those of us who are in 2019 brokers, we thought that during the economic crisis we would only have 1,000 brokers left, because we thought that we would not be able to overcome this deep economic crisis. But here are the numbers. We are still about 5,000. So what needs to happen externally, because internally is not easy, for our sector to have this concentration? Well, I sincerely do not know. Maybe we do not need that much concentration. Maybe if the market allows for 5,000 or so brokers to live together and not have any issue in 15, 20 years, then, well, maybe that's how the market works. In BIPAR, we are studying what are the different figures, because Europe is trying to make them more homogeneous. So we're trying to see whether we have more brokers in Italy or in France or agents. That is something that we will see in our Spanish report. But as I said, probably will be the same type, the same amount of brokers in Spain. I didn't say this before, but the 136 brokers or brokerage industries that belong to Adecose, we are the main ones. So us as brokers, we've improved 0.1 reference points. And you could say, well, that's not a lot, but the thing is that the market in general has gone down. Agents have gone down 0.3 percentage points, direct has gone down 2.5, and bank and insurance has gone up 3.6. But in the fields where we are stronger, which is where we add more value, which are industry, civil responsibility, and transport, we have gone up, and we have gone up quite a bit. 3 percentage points in industrial, 5 percentage points in civil responsibility, and 8 percentage points in transport, which is where brokers can add some value. So this is the current role of brokers. We do not need to really tell you this or give you any details, but probably we will need some requirements, otherwise they will be out of the market. They need to understand the national and international market. Of course, international brokers, they do have an understanding of the market, but what we call local brokers, we need to be very well informed. That is why your company is very important for us, because our clients, they may not be very big, but sometimes they sell all over the world, in Latin America, in Europe, in comfortable markets, but we need to provide a service to them. So we need to understand the current situation, and we need very well-trained teams. If you see the statistics at present on how investment is growing within our organization, in Adecoce we see what is the training, and it's very high, is really key, because otherwise we will not be competitive. We need to be efficient in our management. Digitalization is key in order to manage things in the inner companies very efficiently. We need to have maximum transparency. That's essential for our clients. We need to be ethical in our professional relationships. We need to have a high capability for negotiation. We need to tell clients things they do not know. We need to innovate, and we need to answer or respond to the needs of the clients, which are becoming more and more exigent and strict. In 2017, we only had 112 problem with 9,693 brokers. That was just 1.2% of the whole claims. Thank you, Martín. Next, let us see a very important figure for us, which is the risk manager. At present, we always say that the past was always better and more beautiful. Saying this is very dangerous, but at present, being a risk manager, if you allow me, is very risky. And so we are in a changing world. A more technological world is changing very fast, so it is very difficult to properly identify and assess the the risk that our companies are facing. Risk could be environmental, political, technological, derived from the management of big companies, etc. So, being a risk manager is a risky profession. So, this is the image I think of when I think of these people. That's how I feel when I need to assess the risk of these big companies who are present in 25, 30 countries in this world that is changing a lot. So, I'm sure that your experience will shed some light on this issue. In order to answer this question, I would like to share with you the European Risk Manager Survey that we usually do every year by FERMA, which has 20 associations in over 20 countries. This has been carried out for the past 10 years, and we usually think that this enterprise risk manager is becoming more and more inside companies, and it is starting to work better. The number of surveys is around 735 in all the EU risk manager, and Spain has answered 45 of them. It may seem like a small number but regarding the critical mass that we have is quite relevant. Number one, of course, is French, because many relevant people answered to this survey. Then we have German, Belgium, and British people. Something important is that Italy has grown a lot, and now it has given us 90 responses to this survey. This is a table of contents of this survey. This is an information given by FERMA. That's why it's in English, the original, because it has copyright. And they have 4 parts. The first one is the risk conductor that was implemented by risk managers in different organizations. Then we have a second chapter, which is a constant challenging environment. Third part is the reality of this insurance management, and on the fourth part we have the European Risk Manager profile with some data. We don't have much time, so I would like to give you a cascade of information so that you have it available and then you can extract your own conclusions. First one, the risk conductor of risk managers, and we see in FIRMA we have 3 defense lines. The first one is the one close to the risk manager and other type of departments. Acquisitions, legal department, human resources, IT, treasury. These are the departments that risk managers usually work more closely on the daily basis. Then we have a second defense line, which is occasional one, where departments are, for instance, quality, compliance, internal control, etc. This is something that should be probably on the first defense line. And then we have some departments that we do not have much relationship with regard to risk manager. External auditing, internal auditing, which is something that really catches our attention because it has a lot of relationship with this risk management. But according to our European colleagues, this is only the third line of defense. Among this risk conductor, and answering the question of our moderator, we see that new technologies and risk management are becoming more and more closely. 47% of risk managers, they say that they usually work on both fronts. 44% said that they analyze big data in order to make decisions with regard to some insurance risks, and 9% are starting to use artificial intelligence and blockchain for their decisions. In this image, you see that 76% of risk managers, they assess risk that could affect the relevance and viability of their organization strategy and objectives. 47 and 41% of risk managers, they assess risks related to the different strategies or other questions that have nothing to do with strategy, like could be mission value, core values and vision. With regard to the second part, we have the challenging environment. We see that we have 15 risks that have been identified by our colleagues in their responses. And then we have a top 5 of risks in 2018. Cyber threats, uncertain economic growth, this geopolitical uncertainty, there is an over-regulation, and last but not least, a changing consumer behavior. Then on the right, you can see the top 5 as it was identified in 2016. There are some variations between 2006 and 2018, but some of them are still the same, like economic conditions, or business continuity disruption and political and country instability. But if we identify the 15th main risks, then we have some 3 new risks. And I would like to share this with you because I think could be interesting, which is the swift technological change, which is something that consumers and risk managers identify, having reliability on the information, and last but not least, environmental change and damage. If we now see what is the third part, which is the insurance management, then we expect to have some changes because of the current economic and financial climate. Here is a list of our responses. 52% of risk managers, they negotiate long-term agreement or rollover. 44% of risk managers strengthen loss prevention activity, which is something very important from our point of view. 36% of them, they choose an insurance buying pattern. That is, they have a specific strategy in order to implement their programs and purchases. 30% implement or further use the captive facilities. 29% do a selection of blue chip or more financially robust insurance, and 26% are very much concerned on the acceleration of claim settlement process, which, as we've been discussing, is a very important topic that we should discuss more. With regard to this risks that are difficult to identify, we've had this answers. 77% of them, they retain this risk. 50% of them, they do a lobbying in order to find a shared solution. And 14%, they create new captive in order to try and draft a discipline for the risk management in their association. As you can see here on the right, in red, what really concerns risk managers, 85% of them, are limits, are exclusions of emerging and specific risk. 80% of them think that new insurance-related regulations that could affect their products are important. Finally, we could see what is the profile of risk managers. And here, I think it is important to highlight several issues. Some of them could make us think for the future, and some are just cute. For instance, 56% of them, they believe that salaries are over 150,000 euros, and some of them are concerned that there is not enough training. 81% of them, they belong to big companies, and 90% belong to SMEs. So as we can see, SMEs needs a lot of help. What is important, I would like to finish with this, 35% of risk managers, they have, they're 45, 55 years of age, and they usually have more than 10 years of experience. We do not see a generational replacement, and we only have very few young people who are becoming attracted to this type of job. 35% of women. And it is a gender bias, so to say, profession.
Thank you very much, Juan Carlos. Now we have 3 minutes left, 28 seconds, 27, 26. So I think we're going to try and combine 2 questions that I had reserved for the final part. But can you please lead it, Augusto, and then leave a few seconds for the 2 other speakers. The question is excellence in... Well, this is a central topic. The title is excellence in managing global risks. We could talk about that for hours, but I like to combine it with insurance loss management, which is really the product, the deliverable. So, Augusto, can you please lead the final discussion? Oh, so I have to lead that discussion in just 2 minutes. And people are eager to go to the coffee break. But I think what you're going to say is much more interesting than the coffee break, I'm sure. I'm going to make it fast. So loss management, claims management. So the claim is the time of the truth. It's when really things is really the showdown. So when we have a big loss is when all focus is turned to the risk management at the whole market and the whole industry, because solutions are expected. So we have to work as a clock. We have to work like a clock. We have to be agile, because if we are slow in closing, in handling the claim, the loss, it's a catastrophe. So we have to try and pay for the loss in the same fiscal year when the loss took place. So when we talk about quality, we have to pay attention to the losses. Also the underwriting, also the market capabilities, also the swiftness in satisfying our customers' needs. But we cannot stay in the past, because sometimes we saw it as the post-sales, the after-sales, and after-sales service, and it was accepted that, well, of course there would be tension between the parties, and there will be fighting each one would fight for their interests. That's part of the old way of thinking. That's part of the old mindset. We cannot accept tension to exist anymore when the loss arises. So quality in managing a claim or a loss, it's a new paradigm. So what should a loss manager do when there is a mass claim? What to do with the paragraphs of the wording? If we want to keep the high quality, if we want to keep up with the expectations, if we want to satisfy the customer's expectations, the company, the beneficiary, what to do when an interpretation is ambiguous and it can benefit either the company or the customer? What KPIs are we going to use? Because if we talk quality, we need to talk about KPIs. What KPIs will be using in order to track quality? So these are my, I know, complex questions that are not to be replied today. Some questions are inconvenient, but I think we're mature enough in Spain, we're professional enough to face them. So that's what IGRIA tried to do a year and a half ago when we released our opinion on, or our take on losses. It's not a magical solution that can solve all problems, of course, but companies are now committing to big things in terms of claims. And IGRIA just wanted to make a humble contribution by proposing ideas that we think can be worked upon. And if we are to link this with regulation in the field of big losses should be a self-regulation. Of course, the regulator has to defend the weak party from the strong party, or bridge gaps or inefficiencies, but we should be able to self-regulate. So these kind of associations that are represented here, plus UNESPA, and this forum is a key factor, is necessary if we are to reach a consensus what quality is and what we do with the market cycles. Thank you. 10 seconds for an additional comment, otherwise we close it. 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Enough to say thank you. Thank you for making the effort to be here today. Thank you.